from whom we can derive so much of wisdom. So yes, it's 3:30 now, and I extend a warm welcome to today's speaker, whom I fondly call as my guru as well, Professor MM Pant.
Thank you.
I go down in reverence to you, sir. This is Dr. Jaya Parikh from Ramratna International School, extending a warm welcome and a hearty gratitude to all the participants, my colleagues from Ramratna International School, and all my educator friends from all over the country. Today is the 57th talk. All our speakers are the real Aadharshilas, from whom we derive inspiration, we derive wisdom. We learn how we can do better as educators. Before we move on to today's talk, I would like to take this proud privilege introducing today's speakers, Professor Harari. Sir is the former Vice Chancellor of Engineering at Harari National University, Kerala, Kanpur, and Allahabad, and is professor to the University of Western Ontario, Canada. Professor Pant is the founder of the LMP Education Trust, an organization
Excuse me, ma'am.
So is pursuing next generation learning.
Sorry.
Ma'am, your audio is a bit low.
It's low?
Yes, ma'am. Lower than normal, quite low.
Okay, I'll try to be louder. Okay, so friends, let me introduce our speaker to you. Professor Pant is the former Pro Vice Chancellor IGNOU. He has been a faculty at IIT Kanpur and IIT Allahabad and visiting professor to the University of Western Ontario, Canada. Professor Pant is the founder of the LMP Education Trust, an organization supporting New Age learning. So is pursuing next generation learning using blogging, Twitter, YouTube, and WhatsApp, delivered on mobile phones, named Learning 321, Education in the Third Decade of the 21st Century. His special interests are pedagogies of self-learning, artificial intelligence in education, and creating awareness of quantum technologies. I have personally attended Sir's lessons on WhatsApp. It was a fantastic course on self-learning. You would see that Sir's energy and passion is truly infectious, and he is the one who walks the talk. He does not just talk about using technology, he takes you through it, and he himself uses it so perfectly, expertly, fantastically in delivering his knowledge to his students. So, sir, I have been thoroughly impressed, so impressed with your research-oriented approach to teaching learning, and you have really inspired me to become a self-learner. And I have understood the importance of self-learning in today's uncertain times when the future cannot be predicted. So, without any further delay, I would like our friends to immerse into this learning with Professor Pant on the topic educating oneself for an unknown and uncertain future. So, we are all very excited and keen to learn how to educate ourselves for this uncertain and unknown future. Over to you, sir.
So, thank you very much, Dr. Jaya, and I am actually very happy to be here because the time, and it is in fact interesting indication of your principal's foresightedness that she has thought of this topic as important. This is not a traditional thing on NEP 2020 or one of the standard things that we talk about. And the reason this is so is what I'm going to really talk. And as I had also told her, I would like this to be an interactive session. With all the limitation of audio, video, whatever, let's be interactive and try to make it not just a standard one-way kind of a session, because I can always send you a set of slides. I can give you links to lots of articles, lots of resources. But here is an opportunity to have a conversation amongst ourselves. So the theme I have chosen is educating oneself for an unknown and uncertain future. And there are very, very important ideas hidden in this short phrase. One is it is educating oneself. So which is very different from talking about educating India or a national mission or how do we do this 130 crore people and so on and so forth. Because that is a part of national missions or various other missions, including NGOs, missions and so on. But our responsibility is to educate ourselves. And this is very interesting. See, I also have a law background. I've been a practitioner of law for almost 7 years. In law, there is a very interesting maxim saying ignorance of the law is no excuse. Ignorantia juris non excusat. And you know this. So if a law has been passed, now suppose, for example, you suddenly find in your drawer a few 1,000 rupee notes, pre-demonetization, you don't rejoice because you are likely to have been, accused of a crime of keeping those notes with you. So similarly, in life, ignorance itself is no excuse. If the world has changed, and you say, but nobody told me that the world has changed, I am still living in my below the stone or the world of yesterday, then you alone will suffer. And this is why it is very important to educate oneself. And why it is more important in present times is that things are changing very fast. There was a time, and I have no hesitation in saying this, I say this story ever so often, when I was young and doing my BSc in the year, let us say 1963, 1964, studying physics, modern physics, I could use exactly the same notes which my uncle who studied in 1942 had made. And I could use them because he made them very nicely, systematically, and so on. Syllabus had not changed, things had not changed, and it could be reusable. Today, it is not so. Today, the phone of 2 years ago is not usable. You will find that even few months ago, if you have not updated the operating system, if you have not updated the apps, you will find that something is not working. So the first thing that I want to draw your attention to is that the world is moving very, very fast. In fact, what you have seen now and in the last few months is going to be the slowest rate of change in the rest of your life. The rest of your life, things are going to move much faster. And this is very important because with this comes in your responsibility to keep up to date. It used to happen in the world of fashion that, think fashion changed every season, and if you were a little out of sync, you would be lost because you would have dressed like something which nobody else would have been dressed like that. Of course, 10 years later, the same fashion comes back, but in this case, it doesn't really happen. Now, the point is, therefore, who will tell you? And this actually gripped me when in one of my sessions I was talking, and one of the indicators of the change is the technological change. The rest are derived change because the technology changes, therefore your behavior changes. So, all of you have heard the word artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, 3D printing, blockchain, augmented reality, virtual reality, cyber security, and so on and so forth. And I'm not even talking of gene editing and so on and so forth. And when one of the times when I was talking about people that these are emerging technologies, one young person said, "Sir, ye syllabus mein kab aayega?" And then it occurred to me that you cannot wait for these things to come into the syllabus. You cannot say that because this was not in my syllabus when I did my master's or bachelor, I know nothing about it. This is the key message that I want to talk about. And then, of course, I want to say that this is doable. We often think that unless somebody teaches, we can't learn, because this is a kind of a myth which has been created, especially by the teachers, and especially, see, much of our education really came from the religious model. So most of the society was ignorant. A few people in India, typically the Brahmins, and elsewhere the religious leaders, the Pope, the bishops, the cardinals, they were the ones who knew what religious texts say, when religious festivals are there, when will be Ganesh Chaturthi, when will be some Moni Amavasya, and this is the knowledge that they had. And they would share this knowledge with the illiterate and people, and there was no such thing as a printing press or a internet or something where you could go and look it up. So that was the model, that you were very dependent upon the one who provided you whatever knowledge it was, in whatever form it was. Largely it was about how to live. what are the rules for living and so on. And this continued for a long time. It is only recently, a couple of 100 years ago, that education became more generic, that you started talking about various other subjects. And I would recommend all of you to read the book by Anthony Seldon called The Fourth Education Revolution. This is a very good book. It is the best book which an educator can read because it summarizes, it says so far there have been only 3 education revolutions in the entire history of civilization. And the third one, he says, happened because of the printing press. And first, second, I won't go into it, was about, communities and agricultural practices and so on. The third, he said, was the printing press, and that he said printing press, radio, television, all this is part of the third education revolution because it meant that you could do broadcasting, that you could get things out to other people. You didn't have to attend sessions in person with the teacher, etc. And this is it. And he called the fourth education revolution today's revolution, which is driven by artificial intelligence and allied technologies. So this is basically the thing. And I will also, I'm sure you'll have questions and I will respond, but the key difference between the third education revolution and the fourth one is that up till the third education revolution, we were talking about massification, about broadcasting. So when you have a television program or a radio program or a printed book, everybody gets the same copy of the same book. So page 40 of that book, everybody gets the same thing. Today, it is changed. It is the era of Netflix. What you are seeing on Netflix, what I am seeing on Netflix, what somebody else is seeing is very different. Not only that, when the Netflix gives you the announcement kind of image that you will get will be different for different people. Because it looks at what kind of thing you like. If you are more interested in what the male lead is like, then the male lead's photographer will be prominent. If you are going by the female lead, then the female lead will be this thing on the thumbnail and so on. So we are now moving to an era of personalization. So the big change that is happening is that from broadcasting and massification and homogenization, where everybody gets the same thing, we are now talking of everybody getting exactly what that person wants in a situation. That's the transition that is going to happen. I remember even in corporate training, about 20, 30 years ago, people from corporate training, typically Oracle, will tell you, sir, if you tell me it is Friday, 11:30, I can tell you exactly what topic is being discussed. Because it is planned to the minute, to this thing, everything is planned, and with PowerPoint slides and so on, you could exactly say at 11:30, he will be talking about third normal form or something. But that is not what life is. Life is about individual interests and so on, and that also keeps changing. And this is why, for example, my insistence with Dr. Jaya Parekh was that make this interactive. When people start asking questions at 15 minutes, 20 minutes as they come, and then I respond to that question, and that question gives rise to more questions and comments, and so on and so forth. So the key thing is that we are talking about your responsibility to educate yourself. There is no point in trying to think, well, I was not taught this, or the year 2020 was the year of the COVID, and therefore we were not taught. So it doesn't matter whether it was the year of the COVID or not. So this is one of the very important things. But I also want to share with you something which you would have seen, and otherwise if you haven't seen, very often I'll tell you things to look up on the internet. There's a story doing the net a couple of days ago of a girl called Aditi Singh, who's got a $30,000 award from Microsoft for finding a bug in their program, and she's been given the responsibility to help in that, and she's what is called an ethical hacker. Look at the significance of this. The significance is she is a self-taught programmer. She's not an IIT computer science 5-year degree holder, etc., approved by AICT and so on. No, she has learned it on her own. And she has detected a flaw in Microsoft, which is one of the leading companies. All its engineers are either IITians or this or that and so on. And they created a product on which the flaw was found by a person who has no formal training in that field. No formal training. This is what I meant by talking about educating yourself for an unknown future. And unknown future means that nobody will tell you that I am looking for people who will find defects in my software. So this won't be a job which will be advertised. And internally, those of you who are aware know that development of software is a long process. The software development, testing, retesting, testing with data, etc., then alpha testing, beta testing, and so on. And this is really what I want to draw your attention to. And this is what is very, very important, that the world is seeking problem solvers. And there is no clear definition of which one we are talking of. There were earlier it was like, you do engineering or medicine or law or architecture or something, and you were a specialized area done in a special thing and so on. That is changing before our eyes. And I want to share another story, which is my favorite story. I'm almost sharing it every time because I realize it's a very significant story. The story is of Albert Einstein. We all know Albert Einstein was a great professor, great genius. And he was a professor at the Institute of Advanced Study, Princeton. And he was a professor of physics. And like it is now the season, it was examination time at the end of the year. Now, this is a story about 115 years ago or so. So there are no computers, there are no typewriters, no printers, no photocopiers, nothing. So Professor Einstein writes a set of 6-7 questions by hand. And all professors have a teaching assistant, a human teaching assistant. You must have heard of even some people in your circle who went abroad and they took a teaching assistantship to meet some of the funding, etc., etc. So he gave it to his teaching assistant to get copies made. And typewriters existed because typewriters were there in 1898 or so. So he gave this for typing, copying, and sending to the students. The teaching assistant is also a knowledgeable person, and that is only why he gets a teaching assistant. He looks at the question paper and he tells Einstein that, sir or professor or whatever he said, but these are exactly the same questions you gave to the same students last year. How can you do that? And unlike the situation of mine where I could study the same thing which my uncle studied, Einstein said, you are right. The questions are the same, but the answers have changed. And this is very important because nowhere else in history do I know where in 1 year the answers change. And this happened because Einstein in that year had written 4 papers, one on Brownian movement, one on special theory of relativity, one on photoelectric effect, and one on the famous equation, mass energy equivalence called E is equal to mc square. While he had done all this in 1 year by himself, there were other people like Heisenberg, Schrodinger, Max Born, Max Planck, and Dirac, and so on, who were also pushing the frontiers of physics to create a new field called quantum mechanics, which is appearing. And therefore, the answers, we are in the same thing about education. Questions are the same. What do we teach? How do we teach? Where do we teach? Who teaches? How do we assess? And so on. And you see, for all of them, new answers have to be found. Sometimes we find such answer like CBSE has a stupid answer that class 12 results will be obtained by class 10 plus class 11 plus class 12 plus something, which is completely stupid. And thank God CBSE is only limited to that, not to other things. Otherwise, I was wondering, you heard that for this COVID thing, the most important thing is immunity. Those who have better immunity are able to manage. Those who have poor immunity have not only COVID, but other things also, black fungus and white fungus and this and that. If you allow the CBSE and the 13-member team to have a measure of immunity, they would have said take 30% of the height, 40% of the weight, and 30% of the age, and we have an answer for immunity. But it has nothing to do with real immunity. Just like CBSE formula has nothing to do with real learning which a person has had. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is all these questions are now open questions. And who will answer them? It is educators who will answer them. It is educators who will find new ways of doing these things, just like it was physicists who found new ways of answering questions of physics. The new challenges to education will not be answered by bureaucrats or old-time Padma Shri holders or whatever. They have to be answered by practicing educationists. That under these changed circumstances, what do we do? And that is why I consider this as a very, very important thing. Now, one of the big things that is happening is that because of these things that are happening around us, we are having a world of great change. And that's why I said unknown and uncertain world. Traditionally, and many of you have seen, and this is one of the big shocks to a lot of people, The model of education a few decades ago was go to a good school, do well in your 12th class, then take an IIT JEE entrance exam, then get into IIT, then go into IIM, and then get a good job in a multinational, and life was set. But now we are not sure, because even those multinationals, we don't know what are going to happen. They want to hire less and less. And as we said, Microsoft problems are being solved by people at large. And this is what we mean by an unknown and uncertain world. It is no longer good enough to have gotten into IIT, because the world wants a new kind of people. They were very good. So IITs were very useful from 1960s onward, but this is the time, even including if you look at Microsoft itself, Microsoft's chief is Satya Nadella, who's not from IIT. He has hundreds of IITians working under him, but he himself studied from Manipal University. So the quality of what you achieve, although Sundar Pichai is an IITian, but the point is, it is what you have done. That's why I said educating oneself. The point I'm trying to make is, and this is very important, that every person has to take a responsibility for his or her education and must educate oneself beyond the pieces of paper which certify it, and must be able to say, I know, and I know that I know. It is no question of saying that I got good marks or bad marks or whatever. And the other big thing that has happened is, even educators have to continue learning. So we are now entering the age of lifelong learning, because if educators, you see how embarrassing it will be if your students know much more than you. I mean, they already know more than you. They already know more than you, but if they know much more than you, it will be very embarrassing. And therefore, even for teachers, lifelong learning is important. Therefore, educating oneself is important. So just like the students are learning about, let us take a new topic, and one of the new topics in today's time is about viruses. Now, you will be surprised. Most of the doctors, when they did their MBBS, they did not learn much about viruses. Viruses may be in 1 or 2 sessions. Your CBSE curriculum on biology has nothing about virus. It begins with the cell. So they believe life begins with the cell. The virus is something which is not very clear whether it is life or not, because it is not even a full-fledged cell. It is just some protein, a lipid layer, etc., and so on. And therefore, now if you are learning about viruses, very honestly, all doctors are also learning it for the first time. We go to the doctors out of respect, and because of their experience, they can learn a little faster. But the fact of the matter is, they are also learning it for the first time. This is what the new order is. That the so-called expert and the so-called novice, they are both learning it for the first time, but because of the wider experience of the more mature person, that person is able to learn faster and sift between relevant and irrelevant stuff. So this is where it happens. So this is now a very interesting situation where we are talking, when you're saying educating oneself, we're not talking only of small children or young children or students, we're talking of everybody. And anybody who doesn't will miss out. I have seen so many grown-ups on television not being able to distinguish between a virus, a bacteria, and a germ. So they use these words almost simultaneously, synonymously. That whether it is, but so this is what I'm trying to say in terms of the importance of educating oneself in terms of this. The importance I want to also say in terms of
So should we ask for some
Sure.
questions?
If people have questions, comments, observations, absolutely.
Yes. So I think we have established after this communication from Sir that there's no question about self-learning in today's time. This is the only way to keep pace with the time. And as educators, it's very important because our children are already ahead of us. When it comes to technology, when it comes to knowing where the world is heading, children definitely know more than us, and they're more keen to learning new things. Hence, it's imperative that we all get onto this journey and get into self-learning. If there are any questions, please feel free to either type or unmute and speak. You can raise hands or you can just directly unmute and speak. I think, sir, everyone unanimously agrees that it's very important to self-learn. I think we all are keen to know what are the ways to do it. How is the knowledge that we are earning every day is going to become obsolete with time?
Yeah.
How to get over
Okay.
it? How to
Yeah.
overcome
So,
that?
right. So I can continue speaking about generalities, but I said if there is some specific thing which somebody wants to raise or wants to comment upon or elaborate, I'll be happy to do that. So let
Yes,
me not share with you some, and you can feel free to interrupt anytime you feel like. I want to share with you what people who are looking into the future are saying. You would have seen so many reports of the things about the future of work, the future of jobs, the future of careers. Uh, Very often I've been asked to do sessions on future of careers. I said we have to first see whether careers have a future or not, and so on and so forth. So, two or three very important things. One, you must understand the World Economic Forum is an international body which is continuously looking at where the world is heading. So all countries of the world are measured. It's called the World Economic Forum, and it has been doing this for a long time. But very important thing happened in 2014. In 2014, the World Economic Forum coined the phrase that we are now entering the fourth industrial revolution. And as I said, Anthony Shedler's book was the fourth education revolution on a similar this thing. And he said earlier there were three industrial revolutions which were driven by basically steam, electricity, and electronics. So these were the big changes that happened, and you were aware. And the third one was electronics, where suddenly we had all these kind of gadgets which came out of electronics, radios, television, computers, and so on and so forth. And the fourth revolution is going to be driven by AI and the allied technologies that were there. And this is therefore going to change things very fundamentally. Around 2014, there's another very interesting video, and I would suggest all of you can have a look at it. You can Google it, YouTube it, whatever. It has a title called "Humans Need Not Apply," and it is created by somebody called CGP Gray. And basically, he says with this proliferation of artificial intelligence, more and more jobs will be taken over by automation, and for most of the jobs, humans need not apply. Of course, people have disagreement with it. They're going to sort of debate about it, and basically, I would interpret it as humans don't change, then there will be nothing for them. But humans could change. So my metaphor for AI and humans is that it is not that AI will just replace humans like that. But in fact, I'll go to an analogy with school education. I haven't studied in such a school, but good schools used to have horse riding as a subject. And even I think training for officers in the police and IAS, they have to do horse riding. And horse riding was considered one of these important things of training people for the world, so to say. So why was that important? It was important because the horse is a very difficult animal. It's not if you are timid, it will throw you off. But if you can ride it, you can do a lot more things because you are on horseback from Napoleon's times to RCMP in Canada and all energy things that are called horsepower and so on. AI is somewhat like that. If you're timid and scared of AI, it will take away your job. But if you learn AI and master AI, you will become better at your job, more powerful at your job, be able to do a lot more things. So this is going to be the situation with respect to AI. If you are going to be timid and you say, no, AI has come, I don't know what will happen, it is going to take away your jobs. Now, this was then in 2014, and lots of people have kind of disagreed. And actually, the answer comes out if you have a good mix of human and technology skills, then you will be valued. Because now technology will make you more powerful and human will make you human. There was a time, we don't remember that now, but there was a time when doctors didn't have much power in their medicines, but it was their manner and behavior which treated patients. This is because the bedside manners of a doctor and how the doctor behaved helped the patient be treated. The medicine, there was not enough science known. 100 years ago, we knew very little. Only 50 years ago, we learned the structure of the DNA and so on and so forth. So before that, it was like basically if you are nice, etc., the doctor makes you feel comfortable, you will do that. So what I'm saying is that it is therefore mandatory for most of us to come to terms with AI and understand the essentials of it and not be afraid of it and be able to write the AI. You don't have to become a programmer, but you have to understand what it does and how it does. But more important, in 2017, and this I want you to read very seriously and follow other work, another very interesting thinker called Yuval Noah Harari. He is from Israel. He's basically a professor of history, but he's a person who looks at history and technology and biology and everything. So if you talk to him about history, he will talk about history of biology. So he will look at evolution and so on. So it's not history only of kings and rulers. And he coined the word in 2017, and please do Google it. He says that just like the Industrial Revolution gave rise to a set of workers called the industrial workers, as you see in Jamshedpur, Tata Nagar, Murad Nagar, etc., etc. He said this is going to give rise to a set of people called the useless class. And this is what he is saying. He's saying the big danger is that there will be a whole set of people who will become useless class because they will not matter anymore. And they will not matter because what they know is of no use to others. To others mean the progressive element. And they are not good enough to learn new things. And that is why I say learning to learn is like your vaccination against becoming the useless class. So just like to save against corona, we have a vaccination, 2 doses. We shall have to take 2 doses of learning how to learn and learning self-learn, so that then you are protected against becoming a useless class. And you have already seen around you, I mean, the last 1.5 years, you've seen so many people who are on the road, on the street, on this thing, and nobody really cares for them because they don't have any influence. So one of the biggest things in the future, the past phase, is the danger of becoming irrelevant. And this is the biggest thing for humans, because the biggest thing which humans don't like is to be ignored, irrelevant, not talked to, not spoken, not heard. And it's really interesting. And I will take you to something. I'm not a great film watcher, but there's a movie which came either on Netflix or whatever, AK versus AK, Anurag Kashyap versus Anil Kapoor. It's very interesting. There, Anurag Kashyap has a dialogue with Anil Kapoor saying that you have become like Mr. India, invisible and irrelevant. And this is the big danger that Yuval Noah Harari points out. He says that a large part of humanity will become irrelevant and invisible. I mean, irrelevant basically. And he, of course, he says very bluntly, he says in the rich countries with welfare state like Sweden, so Sweden is rich and is a welfare state, they will take care of this and retrain them over some period of time so that they become useful. In fact, in the developed world, there is a expression, not to be confused with our medical entrance exam, called NEET. We call this category NEET, not in employment, education or training. So they say their unemployed will be educated and trained for newer jobs. But he says, he doesn't mention India because people may get angry, but he says, do you think Bangladesh can afford it? Who will retrain the people for the new jobs? And he says, and I'm encouraging you to read, or even nowadays the advantage is you can watch YouTube videos. So you just say YouTube, Noah Harari. Okay. And he says, for example, that earlier what would happen when these changes happen. Many people say changes happen in the past, from agriculture, we moved to industrial age, then we moved to this age, then to that age. He says, see, in the earlier stages, the transition was from one low-skill working job to another low-skill job. So you worked in the farm, you came out and you worked as a in the supermarket, in the Walmart. You could start giving this thing, etc., or doing this. So he said, now the new jobs that are available are high-skill jobs. And for example, there's a big opening as a web designer. There's a big opening as a cybersecurity specialist. There is a big opportunity in terms of creating bitcoins or Internet of Things and 3D printing. He said, but changing that is not that easy. And this is why it is very important to understand. So we are going to have a very interesting thing. We'll have a small set of people who will be very well paid, and a large set of people who will have to fend for themselves. And people are talking about things like universal basic income and so on. Now, this is not really new. It may look to you that this is new, but I am a witness to this in some sense that. So I am part of the IIT system. So my PhD is from Roorkee University, which is an IIT. I taught in IIT Kanpur for about 10 years. I was member of the board of management of IIT Delhi for about 6 years. When IITs were created in the 1960s, it was a similar situation, but it was for the third industrial revolution. So why were the engineering was already there. There was Guindy College of Engineering, there was other kind of thing, Roorkee was there, Banaras was there. Engineering colleges already existed. But when IITs came in the 1960s, the transformation that they did was that the slide rule wielding engineer changed to a computer programmer. IIT Delhi had a UK ICL computer, IIT Kanpur had an IBM computer, IIT Chennai had a Siemens computer, IIT Powai had a Russian computer, but the common thing was they had all become computer programmers. And that is how, when the computer age came, they flourished and they did all the best jobs in those kind of fields. This is what we need to do. And we can do this at the school stage itself. At the school stage itself, we can get children to be ready for these new technologies and the new concepts. So they also need to know mathematics better, they need to know science better, and so on, because IITians were also good in maths and science. In fact, I know this firsthand because IIT Kanpur director was often asked by the traditional engineering colleges, why are you spending so much energy on teaching physics, chemistry, maths again, that they've already studied in school. And in the engineering college at that time, they would do drawing, pencil sharpening, drawing, engineering drawing. They would carry big things. And these people were solving problems and understanding physics, chemistry, maths better. And this is what paid off in the long run. Same thing I want to suggest to the people who are at school yet. While you're at school, learn your fundamentals of that, not only just to pass the IIT exam, but to know that you know maths, to know that you know science, to know that you know chemistry. And what will be surprising to most people is that the future is about biology. We had so far ignored biology as something which you need only if you want to get into medicine, and much of biology was classification, taxonomy. So you had various kind of, in botany you had taxonomy of gymnosperms, angiosperms, etc. And here you had vertebrates, invertebrates, this, that. Largely it was taxonomy. Now people are coming to the question, how does biology work? So it is all right. Now if you want to understand how biology works, you need the physics part of it. Even when we move, everything is forces and friction, etc. So you need to know physics. And then internally, eventually, it is the chemistry inside the big molecules. We talk about all these molecules. Eventually, it is chemistry in that. Even so, let me give an example. People are talking about the virus being mutating in 11 days. This, that. All the doctors are completely baffled, and all they are saying is this mutates. Any child would ask, so what is mutation? How does mutation happen? So what is mutation? They will say random DNA sequence changes. No, any child would say, how can things happen at random? Things happen because of forces of physics, chemistry, mathematics, and then when you go deeper, you realize that the bonds between these genetic materials, DNA or RNA, you need to know, if you don't already know, that structure that they show consists of adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine or uracil or whatever. And there are hydrogen bonds. So that pair of hydrogen bonds, the triple bonds and so on. And it is the protons in this hydrogen bonds which tunnel from one to the other side, causing that mutation. So biology has a long way to go to be able to be explaining what is happening on the way. You already heard of words like molecular biology and so on and so forth. We're hearing words like genetic engineering and so on. But this will become a part of life. So physics, chemistry, maths and engineering will be like, and I am telling you a word which you will hear more often, will be protein engineering. So they will want, because eventually proteins form all the, see, when we move and all these muscles move, what is happening? It is the motors, which is the proteins, which is the motor. There is no electric motor here. There is no steam engine here. It is the proteins movement which is giving that motor. So what I'm trying to say is that the future is very exciting. There are lots of things, and therefore, like it happened with the IITians got very well paid, whereas ordinary BA, BCom, BSc did not get well paid. The people who will be doing all these things will be very much wanted and rewarded globally. But those who will remain sort of, saying that this is too difficult, this is this thing, nobody is teaching me, there is holiday, this, that, they will remain because the world doesn't care. See, I often wonder that you all know the dinosaurs became extinct, but weren't there any senior dinosaurs telling the junior dinosaurs, if you don't change, you will become extinct? Or the dodos, senior dodos telling junior dodos, if you don't change, you will become extinct. So when extinctions happen, it's only when you prepare for it. And what we are trying to say, and many of these thought leaders, I am not the only one. So World Economic Forum, for example, has said that in the entire world, 1 billion people have to be reskilled by 2030. India is also part of that movement, so it is aware of it. But just look at things. So the leaders of the world are telling you that if you don't do this, you will become irrelevant. And they have made a 10-year plan, etc., etc. And we therefore have to move to a much more active participation and responsibility in our own learning. So, would you like to try and see if there are more questions or comments, etc.?
Yes, sir, I would be sharing a few comments.
Good.
I would like to know if this report has any connection with this inspiration we see with the new national education policy coming into place. Was it somehow driven by it?
See, like many things we do in India, the new education policy has a few very important words. So if you look at para 4.6, it clearly says learning how to learn is more important than rote learning.
True.
And I am building on that. But they are not doing this in the rest of the things. The rest of the thing is still about curriculum, this, that, whatever, 4-year, 3-year, 2-year, 5-year, those kind of things. So what it has also done another very interesting thing, what I was now saying, somewhere later it says that dividing this into silos is not an important thing. People should be allowed to study various subjects, which is what I am saying. So there are two major features of the new education policy which I am building. One, learning to learn, except they say learning to learn, I'm saying learning to self-learn. So they're saying learning to learn, somebody else will teach you how to learn.
Yeah.
I'm saying you teach yourself, but eventually you have to learn. And the same thing that I'm saying, that you have to go across subjects. And why it is very important is that all new things will happen across these things. And not only that, now let us imagine we have enough biology that we can have designer genes to produce the designer babies that you want. Okay? But you will need people from design discipline to say what kind of design you want.
Right.
Like you have an interior decorator or an architect, etc., who says this can be built, but this is what is good, right? So if you could, it's a very interesting question. If you could have a designer baby, what kind of a baby would you want? Now, designer babies are not too much into the distant future, because CRISPR is a gene editing thing, etc. There's issues about law and ethics. As you know, in China, they do all kinds of things. You know, in China, they've threatened that we will use CRISPR to create the most intelligent children ever. So we will do this so that so you can have whatever you want. I will have a large population of very intelligent children. But a designer might tell you that no, in addition to intelligence, give them ethics, give them values, give them judgment, give them empathy, give them this. So why the future is very exciting is there are so many new things to do. And why this will be interesting to learners also, because they are actually stifled to boredom by just the same things that they are being told and have to prepare. So these are 2 points of connection with the new education policy. Except that what I am saying is that it is the individual's responsibility to seek his welfare rather than vary wait for a government handout to come. One day government will create an Indian. See, if you look at IITs,
Absolutely,
we had
absolutely.
only 5 IITs for a long time. Now we have 15 IITs. Why can't we say anybody who wants to study engineering can start studying engineering from tomorrow? And let him keep going to what levels he reaches. So somebody may reach, okay, so what is your discipline?
I'm from chemistry, sir.
Ah, good. So you'll anyway appreciate much of this.
So I've
anyway,
been, yes, enjoying the examples we have discussed about viruses
No,
and
it's
how,
very interesting.
you know, biochemistry, biotechnology is,
Biology is all chemistry.
of course,
Biology is all chemistry.
yes,
Except
without the
that
basic
the
understanding
digital
of chemistry.
biology, we don't get into the chemistry part of it and we just look at the descriptive part. But
Right.
in English, for example, apart from what you may have curricular English, people have created certain standards for levels of English. And not only English, for all languages. So in Europe, because there are many languages, they have something called CEFR, which is Common European Framework of Reference, for whichever language. And they say broadly, we can say A, B, C, and then they divide A into A1, A2, B into B1, B2, C into C1, C2. So C2 means you are very proficient and very good. C1 means you are close to proficiency. A1, A2 means you are beginning. B1, B2 means you are intermediate. Now, this can be done for all subjects. So why can't I do this for chemical engineering? I can say you begin with A1 chemical engineering, then A2 level chemical engineering, then B1 level, and one day, and you take your time. Why should we say only 150 people will be taken, 10,000 people? See, I find it so ridiculous. 15 lakh people are willing to give you several lakh rupees per month to study that. And you say, I will not teach you. You go and give this to Akash Institute, Patal Institute, whatever, then come to me and I will teach only a small number. So I have very often said that, why would you go to an institute who's so stupid? An institute who says that, no, these people are not saying, let me in free. They're not saying that they're willing to give lakhs of rupees a month, lakhs of students. But the institute says, no, I won't take it. You give it to Akash, Patal, Baiju, whatever. I will teach only a few people. So the point is that we should see learning as a continuum. And it is quite possible, and I have been in IIT, I've seen it, many people join IIT, but they realize this is not for them. It is our parents' pressure that came to IIT. They would rather be literally Chetan Bhagat as a person who writes books. So the point is that you will allow, and this is what the new education policy also says, that allow people to play around with a lot of subjects, but what it doesn't do is to create levels for them and say that you can give a certificate at any level, and there is a technology in this called digital badges. So you can get badges for whatever you know, and your collection of badges can be done. And in future, AI will kind of look at what you will do with these kind of things.
Right. So I think to a large extent, we see an improvement happening with the way NEP has been framed. And if the educators take it the right way, the institutions take it the right way,
see, the problem with NEP is what I began with. It is one policy for everybody. That you will do what? 5 plus 3 plus 2 plus 3 plus. We all know people evolve at different levels. You may have a child at class 6 who's in maths like class 8 or class 10. But you say, no, now for 2 years you will not study anything more, you will not do that. So allow people to, so once we have this level-wise framework, can allow people to progress at different levels. So this is my criticism of the NEP, that anybody who has seen more than one child knows that no two children are alike. How can you create one framework for crores of people and so on and so forth? And then it becomes
that's a fantastic perspective, much needed. Though they are not talking about breaking the silos between different subjects, but we also have to treat every individual as an individual learner.
So like Howard Gardner has talked about multiple intelligences for decades. We were talking about it. So you say these are all the 10, 12 subjects. I get class 6 level achievement here, class 10 level achievement here, class 3 level achievement there, and so on, and let that be a report card. What is the problem? Let people interpret it as per their needs. So anyway, so in terms of assessment,
that would be a dream-like situation where every child has the opportunity to learn and do what they want to at any level.
It should be, and it is today. It is doable. See,
it is
the
doable.
point was, I appreciate these restrictions very much. And I can tell you my own story. So when I was in school, at around, I think, class 7, 8, it was time to choose only a few subjects. And the big clash I had was I wanted to do physics. I also wanted to do literature. And they said, no, but you can't do both of these at the same time. So we had a thing that physics and literature, maths and history. So I wasn't very keen on history, so I was happy to drop history and take maths. But for English, so I went to the principal also, and I said that I want to do both literature and physics. The principal said, but we have simultaneous classes for them, because the class schedule, timetable, that physics and English is happening at the same time. So I said, I'm a bright student, I will attend some classes here, some classes there, and manage. So he says, I know that, but the board, the Cambridge, which we were doing at that time, in the Cambridge, the final exam will also be at the same time. So you can't take both the exams, and therefore you will not get. Now, if you still want to do it, I have no problem. But then I was also so practical enough that why should I do something for which I will get no credit in this thing? So I stuck to physics. So I understand these things, that these are constraints of it, but now in the pure electronic world, the constraints no longer exist. You can do all kinds of things, get all certificates, they can all be badges, and then people who are relying on that can decide that, okay, we want this combination, we want this combination. It is going to happen. It is going to happen. How much time it will take will depend. It will also depend upon employers showing more of that thing, because in the past, employers were looking at very narrow qualifications. In fact, not only that, sometimes that, they were saying engineering from IIT or MBA from IIM. So this is the thing that had come. Once they become more liberal, that we don't care about your degree and institute, but what you know, and things could change.
In fact, the scenario has already started changing when we see the recruitments at Google and such organizations. So, sir, there are some thoughts expressed here.
Yeah. So
I would like Mr. Kapoor to unmute and speak up, followed by Mr. Pushpendra. Mr. Kapoor, there was a comment in the chat box.
Ma'am, a couple of people have raised their hands. Ms. Shaheen Parveen.
No, if Mr. Kapoor wants to put his point, let him speak first. Or okay, sir, I'll just read out to you.
Yeah.
This was with reference to what you were saying a little earlier. He said this problem is because we are not accepting change as a process. We are making change an event.
Mm-hmm.
So he said this with reference to something that you were making a point.
The point is very simple. We have seen in the past that those who changed and adopted whatever was the future trend were the ones who were successful and flourished.
Right.
The point was, in the past, this could be done only in a few places which had that facility or feature. Today, with the digital world, almost anybody who wants to do it can do it. So this is the basic point. So it's more a question of, that's why, for example, in my session, and you have also taken part, I talk more about the motivation and mindset. So, for example, I draw a lot upon Stephen Covey's 7 principles of success. So, normally everybody will talk about Stephen Covey, because I just, here we are talking of success in learning. So, the first thing is you have to be proactive. Second thing, you have to begin with the end in mind. Third, you have to do first things first. So, as he said, not make an event out of it, but this thing. Then he says, first try to understand, then to be understood. Then he says, synergy. And the last one says, sharpen the saw. Now, these are essential things for becoming successful in learning. Often when we talk about teaching learning, we talk only about, the basic content or cognitive things, etc. But the behavioral part is very important. I also talk a lot about the open mindset and closed mindset. Because this whole thing is part of you're transforming. You have to first transform your mindset. And if you don't have that mindset. Suppose your mindset is always a closed mindset, diffident mindset, not open to looking at things, you will have difficulty. So you have to change the mind also. In fact, that's why I often say that all teachers should first be learning psychology and empathy before they enter the classroom. Because they're subject teachers, but they're not subject. Subject is something incidental. They're teachers of their students, their learners. If they can't relate to the learners, can't identify with the learners, what is the point of knowing that physics very well? Physics is available everywhere today. Today, any subject matter up to not only class 12, BSc, MSc is available for asking from Google, and not only Google, you can even ask Alexa. I used to show people, ask Alexa, what is machine learning? Alexa will give you the answer. Ask Alexa, what is artificial intelligence? Alexa will give you the answer. So teachers are not for answering such questions. Teachers are basically for you to getting you inducted into the joy of learning, the desire of learning, the thing, which is already there in all children. It is very interesting that it is not something you have to, many people say, how do I motivate? They are already motivated. Earlier years of schooling have demotivated them. You just have to bury it back. Yeah. Any other
Right. Okay. So I think this wonderful explanation has made things a lot clear to everyone. So there is a question from our librarian, Mr. Pushpendra. Pushpendra, sir, it would be good if you ask it directly.
Hi, namaste sir, namaste ma'am, namaste everyone.
Namaste.
Sir, I just went through your website and I found it very fascinating, the work that you have done so far, which ma'am has already introduced. My only question is that we have so much of information around. Just wanted to know how we can do time management in spite of so much of information, how we can tune in to have a better time management.
Great. So one of the things that I do in my longer course is to have a whole session on time management. So when you look at time management, one of the first thing is you have to prioritize. See, we get distracted ever so often. And therefore, once you have got, so if you remember, I'm going back to Stephen Covey's habit. First, be proactive. Now, once you are proactive and you say, I want to learn this, and I really want to learn this, then that becomes your priority and you will give more time to it. Otherwise, we are driven by what happens. So the whole issue is, do you want to be reactive to what happens to you or you want to be active? Actually, Mashalkar has written a very nice book where he says that, he uses a nice expression, that pole vault instead of leapfrog. He said leapfrogging is when a frog reacts to a danger and therefore he leaps and etc. But he says pole vault is when you decide that I want to overcome a certain barrier, I will use the tool which is a pole of a certain height, I will use that pole as a lever to reach that height and then I will jump off. So basically what we are talking of is being active, and key word is active learner. Once you become an active learner and you want to really do that, you will prioritize your things and remove the distractions.
I would like to add to this, sir. This Eisenhower matrix helps you put your task into different categories. What is urgent and important, and then what is urgent, not important, and so on.
Right.
So this would help you prioritize the way sir is asking us.
Yeah. And not only that, in that course we also talk of something which is called a Pomodoro technique. Now, although the word Pomodoro means tomato in Italian, and it is basically because the kind of watch that the person used, timer, was in the shape of a tomato. Basically, you decide that I will not spend more than a certain amount of time on a given task. There is a very famous thing called principle, that work expands to fill the time. So if you give more time to a certain thing, the same thing you will take more time. But if you decide I have to do this in 5 minutes and out, it will be done and out. So there are various techniques, but eventually it is about motivating yourself to do certain things. Formation of habits is also very important. So when you create habits, then you save a lot of time, because all that done automatically. So you can decide what to do in the morning, what to do in the afternoon, what to do when, what to do before going to bed, and so on and so forth. That does.
Thank you, Mr. Pushpendra, for this question.
Thank you, ma'am.
And sir, I would like people to directly ask you questions, if that's fine. Those who have raised their hands or those who have any concerns, queries, feel free to unmute and speak. Miss Madhumati has raised her hand. Do you wish to speak, ma'am? So Mr. Pandya is asking, did you mean the book by Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar on time management?
Yeah. Not on time management. That book is on, it is a very complicated title, leapfrog, pole vault, etc. So he basically says you must plan to pole vault rather than leapfrog, and it is in the context of innovation. So he has a whole model about innovation, etc.
I think everyone is simply startled by the fact that very soon there would be millions of people who would fall into the useless class if they don't
Which
bend
is
their
true.
ways from now
No,
and start
see,
preparing themselves for the change.
You will agree, as principal he was meeting a lot of people, you must mentally realize that inka kya hoga. So we meet certain people,
Right.
we already meet them. That, and they will be coming to
Absolutely.
you as a prospect, I want to be a teacher, I want to do this, and you would be wondering. Well, when I was actively in all this, sometimes when people came for interview as candidates, I would say, इनको यहाँ तो job नहीं दे सकते, जहाँ ये है वहाँ से हटाया जा सकता है कि नहीं? So this is the problem that we have. So, and you will see more and more, because, so the answer is just redoing this, repurposing yourself, and learning is the simplest starting point. You learn a new thing which is valuable, which is useful, you can do for things, then move on. Very often people even do courses and join training without having any idea why they want. And this is where I like that Stephen Covey's second thing, he says, begin with the end in mind. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to do this? What do you hope to do with it? Now, we often don't begin with the end in mind. You begin, we'll get a piece of paper, something will happen. But if you say that, well, where does this fit into your plan? So it's very interesting how Stephen Covey wrote something in 1985 or whatever on general principles of success. It applies to success in learning.
Well said, sir. There's a question by our Vice Principal, Dr. Smita. She's asking, with the advent of artificial intelligence and other technologies, I think this is in reference to that. She's asking, will talent, hard work, dedication not matter at all? What about natural intelligence?
Okay, very good. So it will get augmented. So when you use a microphone or a loudspeaker, it is not that your voice doesn't matter. Your voice gets augmented. When I'm using the internet in this meeting, my voice is getting augmented, reaching about 60 people, where I am, wherever. So it is not that. See, very often, because people like to fight, they create this versus that. So it is not AI versus humans. And I've been saying this a long time. When people at MIT, etc., creating AI, that is not to take away your job. That is to be able to do certain things better, faster, and so on. And we're seeing here as an example. Incidentally, that can lead to displacement of certain jobs because you need so many fewer people. And many of the things are being done by that. But it is actually for educators, AI is the biggest boon. In fact, I have no hesitation, you raise that issue. AI will lead to there being need of fewer educators, but all educators who will be there will have a larger influence, a larger footprint, and so on. So it helps you. See, today you are constrained within the classroom. How many people do you influence? 30, 40 in a class, 4 sections, 100 people over 1 year. These 100 people are with you. You teach for 30 years, some 3,000 people are with you. In my one session, there are 3,000 people. So the whole influence factor is very different. And you have a global influence. You could be with the same thing.
No barriers, no boundaries.
Turkey, from there. So to me, it is the golden age of educators. But golden age of educators who are fulfilling some needs of the learners. I mean, this is amazing. You cannot imagine how important. There are some professors now who are more important than their universities. Although they are from Harvard, etc., but people like this thing, they are known much more than Harvard. And this is there. Earlier, it wasn't so. Earlier, you were limited to the university you were in, the student that came there, what they did. Today, you are, and you will see this happening all over the thing. So I have often said that we'll have an era of celebrity professors. Yes, cinema stars, the celebrity owner is gone because nobody can. And I will tell you why. See, cinema stars appeal to you because they are titillating, they are entertaining. Educators will appeal to your mind, and you imagine the bigger influence that you will have. And people haven't seen that yet because it wasn't happening. Neither were people hungry for knowledge, nor were the things available for going out to larger number of people. Now that with both these things happening, and the mobile phone, see the Reliance Jio phone, which will be launched on 10 September, will get many teachers having millions of students. And even if you charge 2 rupees per session for an hour, you will get a lot of money. This is how Reliance makes a lot of money. This is how you will also make a lot of money.
Right. So I think, in fact, it's not scary. It's about using our natural intelligence, coupling it with technology and artificial intelligence, using it for our benefit, for our advantage, to reach out to more, to learn more, to enhance the way we deliver and we grasp. So it's not scary, but it was a beautiful question. And thank you for a wonderful answer.
There is a Professor Gilbert Strang who teaches linear algebra at the university level. He has millions of students. And of course, he talks about. Now, I had never imagined that millions of students would be wanting to learn linear algebra. So this is it. It's not only simple things about English language teaching or something else.
That's amazing. So this technology is bringing the students from all over the world, come together, learn from the best experts in the industry, and don't be limited by what a particular university offers, a particular college offers. There are experts like Professor Pant. There's so many of them, so many of educators around the world who are looking for such students. And technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc., making it possible.
So in the US, there was a student who registered for one of the online courses. And he was doing that course. He did it for a few months. And then he realized that the professor is already dead. And he wrote to the university. So वो जो हिंदी में पिक्चरों में कहता है ना शाहरुख खान, जिंदगी के साथ भी जिंदगी के बाद भी, so you will continue to teach people even after you are not there. See, just like your textbook, if you are no longer alive, that doesn't mean your textbook is not being used. So your video will continue to be used long after you are dead. So there will be new ethical issues on that. Can a university use a dead professor's video to say that this is offering a degree?
Now people in their will mention whether their videos, recorded videos, etc., can be shared after, posthumously.
Yes, right.
This was just in the lighter vein. Miss Madhumita, you have raised your hand. Do you wish to say something? Anyone who wishes to express their thoughts or concerns, this is the last call for it. Sir, I think this has been truly informative, deeply enriching and insightful discussion. We would like to hear your parting remarks.
No, my parting remark is very simple that firstly, especially for educators, if you haven't been doing so far, become a learner, become a lifelong, pick up anything which you see around. I wish I knew that. Just go ahead and try to learn that and so on and become it. Because one of the things which many of you may not have realized, we are all going to live very, very long lives. Now, this is, for an unprepared person, it can actually be a curse. But if you prepare for it, it is, and as an educator, a long life is very valuable. I am sharing this with personal example. I have my senior colleagues from IIT Kanpur who were like 10 years older to me or whatever. They have now drawn pension for more years than they drew salary. So they did a PhD at 40 years, they became a faculty in IIT Kanpur. They retired at 60. Today they are 85. They are still wanted because they are teaching quantum mechanics and those topics which are still in demand and so on. So it is very important for you, and things are changing. So more than your students, you also need to, or as much as your students, you need to be aware. And the thing that we mentioned, partly discussing NEP, the cross fertilizations, the linkages between different fields. If you are a chemistry teacher, look at biology. If you are a physics teacher, look at chemistry. And not only that, even you can look at the descriptive, the creative literary part. So, for example, it would be very interesting to write imaginary things. So, for example, one of the things I want to share with you at closing. So, there's a very interesting book called When Computers Were Humans. So, Google for it. This is a very interesting book called When Computers Were Humans, and this is true. So, in 1950s, computer was the designation of human beings, mostly women, and these were people who were doing calculations for senior, more established scientists. So this was done in Jet Propulsion Lab, etc. This book is written by a person who came to know that his grandmother was such a computer once upon a time. And in the 60s, 70s, the computers came and replaced all humans. Now you believe computer means a machine. I want you to think over that. Just like that book is there, when computers were humans, to plan an article book story when teachers were humans. And then say, yes, once upon a time teachers were humans, now they are all machines, and so on. And there is no reason why it won't be true. This will happen in whatever number of years you want to take, and so on and so forth. But this will happen, and if you don't write such a book, the AI will write such a book. The AI will write a book when computers were humans. Now it is us. So this is by way of closing.
You're right, sir. This is already happening. In some of the schools, the robots have already started teaching. So soon we might have that time when teachers were humans. I don't know how this is going to happen, how this is going to look, how this is going to affect the human teachers.
Imagine, you say it is the year 2041 and we are all coming to school, etc. And the parents are telling the children that when they went to school, there were human teachers, now there are machine teachers, whatever.
So this is fantastic. It makes us aware of the opportunities that the technology opens for us. Let us make it our friend, and let's not try to stay away from it. Like sir said, we would be lagging behind. There is no point in getting scared, but joining hands with technology, learning, self-learning, moving ahead with time. And that's when we will prove to be the right teachers and guides for our children. Sir, this has been so exciting and so insightful.
So, thank you very much, and I
Thank you so much.
congratulate you for having organized this, and I hope that participants found it useful.